You know that feeling when you scroll through a sea of gaming rigs, see the glossy renders, the rear ditto play promises, and then the box arrives and you're left wondering if you just bought a paperweight. I've been there more than once, and the frustration usually comes from the gap between marketing hype and what the machine actually does once it's sitting on your desk. That's why I wanted to break down a pre-built that's been getting a lot of chatter lately, the iBUYPOWER Element SE, so you can decide if it's the right fit before you click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest hesitation people have with any pre-built is whether they're paying for a well-balanced system or just a collection of parts that happen to work together. With the Element SE you get a mid-range AMD Ryzen 5 8400F paired with an RTX 3050, 16GB of DDR5 RAM, and a 1TB NVMe SSD. On paper that sounds solid for 1080p gaming, but the real test is how those components play together in everyday scenarios, from launching a new open-world title to juggling a Discord voice chat and a streaming overlay. Let's talk about the out-of-the-box experience. The chassis arrives fully assembled, which is a relief if you're not comfortable installing a CPU cooler or routing cables yourself. The front panel has a subtle RGB strip that can be toggled with a single button, so you get that gamer aesthetic without needing a separate controller. I set it up on a modest desk with a 24-inch monitor, plugged in the bundled keyboard and mouse, and powered it up. The system boots into Windows 11 within seconds, and the SSD's speed is immediately noticeable. Games install in a fraction of the time you'd expect from a traditional hard drive. Now, where does it really shine? If your primary use case is playing modern titles at 1080p with medium to high settings, the RTX 3050 handles that comfortably. I tested a few demanding games, Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, and Fortnite, and all of them stayed above 60 frames per second when I capped the graphics at a balanced level. The 16GB of DDR5 also helped keep frame time stable during those hectic moments when you're dodging enemy fire and swapping weapons. For anyone who streams occasionally, the combination of the GPU and the SSD means you won't hit those dreaded stutters when you start a broadcast, though you'll still need a decent internet connection for a smooth stream. On the flip side, there are a couple of hidden trade-offs that matter once the novelty wears off. The 8400F, while decent for current games, doesn't have an integrated GPU, which is fine because you have the RTX 3050, but it also means you're locked into using the graphics card for any display output. If you ever wanted a fallback for troubleshooting or a lightweight workstation mode without the GPU, you'd be out of luck. Another practical point is the power supply. It's a 500W unit that's adequate for this build, but it doesn't leave a lot of headroom if you decide to upgrade to a higher-end GPU later. I've seen a few users try to swap in a 3060 and run into power draw warnings, so the upgrade path isn't as future-proof as you might hope. Thermals are another real-world concern. The Element SE uses a standard air cooler on the Ryzen, and the case has a single front intake and rear exhaust fan. In a room that's kept around 70°F, the CPU temperatures hovered in the low 70s during long gaming sessions, which is acceptable but not spectacular. If you live in a warmer climate or tend to push games to max settings for extended periods, you might notice the fans kicking up a bit more noise than you'd like. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind if a quiet setup is a priority for you. Who should consider buying this machine? If you're a gamer who wants a rear ditto play PC without fiddling with BIOS settings, cable management, or BIOS updates, this is a solid entry point. It's especially appealing for students or young professionals who need a capable gaming rig that can also handle everyday tasks like video editing, web browsing, and streaming media. The inclusion of a keyboard and mouse adds a small convenience factor, meaning you can literally plug it in and start playing within minutes. Who might want to pass? If you're a competitive esports player who demands ultra-high frame rates, low latency, and a system that can be tweaked down to the metal, you'll probably outgrow the RTX 3050 and the 500W PSU faster than you'd like. Likewise, if you're planning a serious content creation workflow that involves 4K video rendering or heavy multitasking with multiple monitors, the CPU and GPU pair here will start to feel limiting. In that case, investing in a custom-built system with a more powerful processor and a higher capacity power supply would give you more breathing room. One practical strength that often gets overlooked with pre-builts is the software side. iBUYPOWER ships the PC with a simple utility that lets you toggle the RGB lighting.